Welcome to the Influential Personal Brand Podcast. This is the place where we help mission-driven messengers just like you learn how to build and monetize your personal brand. My name is Rory Vaden, and I'm the co-founder of Brand Builders Group, a Hall of Fame speaker, and New York Times bestselling author. And this show is to help experts learn how to become more wealthy and well-known. I know you're going to love it. Thanks for being here. Let's get started.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Influential Personal Brand Podcast. AJ Vaden here. And I am going to be having an amazing conversation with a new friend of mine, Jason Stacy. And before I formally introduce him, as I always do, I want to kind of let you guys know what this episode is all about and why you should stick around. Sometimes I have hyper-specific episodes that are really for those of you who are trying to write a book or launch a book, others who are building their speaking career, or, you're trying to build a coaching community. This is not one of those episodes. This is one of those episodes that is about how to succeed at life. So it doesn't matter what you do, where you are, who you are. This is one of those universal conversations that is going to help you no matter what stage of business or life that you're in. So I wanted to let you guys know up front that occasionally we have these universal kind of conversations. It just applies to everything. But I think this is a really great and important topic about managing your energy, emotions, and environment, and how being the master of those things helps you succeed at life. So that is why you need to stick around. Now, before we get into this amazing conversation about all these things, let me introduce you to Jason Stacy. We're going to talk about his journey from homelessness to high performance coaching. And I think really it's going to be a conversation about his testaments to resilience, adaptability, and unshakable foundations, and how we can all build those from learning about these things. Now, over the last 20 years, he has worked with elite athletes, business leaders, and high stakes professionals, helping them not just reach the top, but more importantly, sustain their success once they get there. And his philosophy centers on mastering energy, emotions, and environment, because true success isn't just about achieving greatness. It's about sustaining and growing it long term. Jason, welcome to the show.
Well, good morning, everybody. Well, thanks for that huge introduction. That's great.
Well, I think it's one of these, and why I thought you were going to be so great for this show, is I think a lot of people talk about how to get success. How do we reach the top? How do we do all these things? But very few people actually talk about what do you do when you get there? And how do you keep it? And how do you sustain it? It's one thing to do all the work to achieve these things, but is it really what it's all cracked up to be when you get there? And what do you do to maintain and sustain when you get there? So I thought this was going to be an amazing just topic for our particular audience. But before we get into that, I have a burning question that I really want to know. I think it's always a fascinating place to start, is to learn a little bit about your story and your history. But I really want to know, how did you go from, being homeless to high performance coaching, and how is that journey really informed your approach to coaching?
Wow. For the small question, I'd say, oh, easy. Here we go. We have a whole episode for this one right now. Well, look, I mean, it's a very long journey. It wasn't something just like, some small or some sudden, aha moment that happened. I mean, how I became homeless. I mean, the short version is my father died when I was very young. I was around 10 years old. It really hurt my mom quite a bit. Gosh, I always get a little bit emotional when I talk about it, but after a couple of years of being pretty rough with her, I don't know how I ended up at some people's houses doing some weird babysitting thing, and I went back after that, and nobody was there.
Oh, wow.
So weird. Hey? Still get emotional about it. So anyway, so I had a few years where I was just by myself on the street, just trying to figure out how to live, survive, and
So you went home from a babysitting gig? And
yeah, where I was staying. I was for a few weeks. I was like there for a while, like for a few weeks, like with these people, and these people were messed up too. It was a terrible environment. It was yeah. I can't even believe some of the things. If I would explain to you or tell you some stories, like you wouldn't believe it. It was just blowing my mind. But anyway, so yeah, I ended up being homeless, and I was by myself for a few years there for most of that part, just finding ways to survive, to just all kinds of different things. And, I did try and go back to school. Officially, I finished 8th grade was the last grade that I finished, as far as school goes. But
Wow.
I was trying to go back to school. I was having people I was like doing things for to help pretend like my parents to sign things and just doing stuff like this. But anyway, how I ended up getting back off the streets was in this neighborhood, which was a pretty crappy neighborhood, really. It was a martial arts school. It was in between like an adult bookstore and like a old tavern. It was like in a pawn shop. It was just a crappy little place. Right? The area itself. And I used to walk by this martial arts. I was born in Japan, actually. And as a young child, I started martial arts from when I was a little kid. And I was just like always a big part of my like identity in my life, before all this, sort of mess happened. And I would go in there sometimes and just watch and sit and watch. And, eventually the owners, there was like a lot of like police officers and military guys kind of training there. And they eventually let me train there, even though I had no parent to like sign things, this and that. And I would say that's probably it's so weird. And that place is where like it like got me off the streets.
Wow.
So I haven't talked about that much in a while. So
my good friend Ben Kolarczyk always says that tears are truth tellers. Right?
Well, there you go. There's a bit of truth. Anyway, a lot of people in my life now who I consider family I met there. And so there was a lot of training. I eventually started teaching there, and through there I actually learned a lot about coaching, a lot about people, because in the martial arts it's a very holistic approach to things. You're developing the person, not just learning how to fight. So at least where I was training, for all of our black belt levels too, I had stacks of books. I had to read about philosophy, about history, about physiology, about human behavior, psychology, and I had to write papers on each of these books. So it's very about developing you as a human, as a person, not just, hey, can you defend yourself or fight? There was a big part of that, obviously. Then obviously the actual training, you'll learn how to manage your emotions, about managing your mind, about being more aware of yourself, about your surroundings. And it was, for me, I just got obsessed with that. And I got really like hyper, focused on being curious, asking lots of questions, wanting to understand how and why people work and the way they work. And I learned a lot about coaching, a lot about humans, a lot about people. I was pretty young. At that time, I was probably 19 or 20 years old. And I was like teaching guys twice my age, about certain things. And, I just, my coaches and senseis, they, probably from my other experiences, I had like a good sort of sense of these things. It just sort of naturally kind of went with that. And now, from there, we had some students who were like physiotherapists and massage therapists, and I would talk to them at night. I had a roommate. She was, her and I got a place together as a roommates, and she was a therapist, massage therapist and physio. And I was talking about all these things about the body works, and she's like, how do you know all this stuff? She's like, you know more than like my teachers do. You just don't know words of it. Like you don't know how to describe it. So it kind of like got me interested in like, hey, maybe I'll go learn how to do this as a career or a job, because, it's still kind of floating around. So I put myself through like massage school and then sports therapies, and became a personal trainer, then a strength coach, and then athletic trainer, the guys that kind of run on the field and do all that, emergency care stuff for a sport. And I just sort of just built up my own education from there. And the one thing I noticed though, as I was doing that, a lot of the physical stuff just came natural for me, like my kinesiology, all this stuff. I graduated with honors, all this. It just sort of came natural, maybe even from all the martial art training and understanding the human body and all that and the mechanics. But one thing I noticed when I started working more, whether it was in gyms or clinics or on the field, is that there was a lot of very knowledgeable people, right, around me. Most of them had much more experience. They had all their degrees, and I had none of these things. I just worked my way through it, sort of very non-traditional ways of getting educated. A lot of it was self-educated, which is, I guess, a bigger thing now, but back then not as much. So I had to really dig deep and find a way to learn these things and be in the right environment around the right people to, be able to have access to this information. But one of the things that I did notice that people just didn't quite get was the people part, building trust, the communicating, the connecting with people to get them to, one of the biggest things that I really push and talk about with my coaches and other trainers and whatnot is, and even my clients, it's that difference between people doing things because they have to versus because they want to. So like commitment over compliance type of thing, right? And so everyone was doing things because they had to, or because the doctor or the physio or the coach or whoever was telling them to do that, right? And so, we have the typical thing, right, where everyone kind of starts and stops and starts and stops. And so nothing was really happening, but I was getting, I'm the new guy. Everyone's twice my age with all these PhDs. And I'm like, I barely finished school. And I kind of went through this like self-learning process. And through just doing hard work, I got opportunities to be in the right places. And yet all the athletes and all the different coaches and even physios were coming to me, wanting to work with me, wanting to ask me questions, which I thought was really weird. But a lot of it was just like, I was just curious. I asked lots of questions, not in a disrespectful way, but to understand like, hey, why are we doing this or that in this way? Or why don't we try this instead of that? And really just understanding these things. But the biggest part was, everyone I worked with knew that I'd always give 100% no matter what I was doing, where I was at. I was always 100% engaged. And I never pretended I knew something I didn't know. I
So
didn't
let me
have to
ask
be the
you,
one with them.
I want to ask you a question about
Yeah.
that real quickly, because this whole concept of, are you doing it because you have to versus you want to? I love that you said that, is this a compliance thing or is this a commitment thing? I think it's really important to something you just said is, no matter what I did, I always gave it 100%. Right. And I don't think a lot of people do that.
The way you can
Hear your take on,
Yeah,
I'd
look,
love to just hear you, because I think a lot of people are listening of going like, am I really giving whatever I'm doing 110%? And is my team or, are people like missing their potential? And how do we get ourselves to give that level of commitment? How do we get our teams to do that?
yes. Well, I mean, I can answer, there's a lot of answers to that question. I mean, one of the first things I would say is, you know what, if you're asking that question, more times than not always, but most of the time, you already know the answer. You know what I mean? Like if you're asking, I'll go, am I really doing what I could do? I mean, again, this is the same thing I see over and over again is everyone loves to lie to themselves. And, we don't have to just have that look in the mirror and go, hey, and I would say, how we go about doing that, obviously, my first step is always looking at yourself. Yes, you're right, your team, all these different things. But, one of the biggest things about, are you really, doing it because you have to or because you want to? I mean, there's so many variables there. There's somebody said that made me think of somebody. I forgot what you were saying, but, for me, the biggest starting point is looking at yourself. If you're asking yourself that question, obviously, there's something missing, right? Try to clear all that clutter out of your head, try to clear the facade of what you think you're doing, and I think it kind of leads to this other thing I like to talk about where, to really start to improve and to go another level and to get that next stage, I think there's like phases you go through, right? It's like these journeys. And a lot of it is, it requires a level of vulnerability, like opening yourself up to, whether it's being coachable, being honest with yourself, being, a little bit, maybe not harder on yourself, but maybe having a balance of being really hard on yourself, but also having some self-compassion. Because sometimes we bring ourselves down and we end up not getting anything, we kind of get stuck. So I think there's this process of you kind of need to have some vulnerability, be open for these things, have that balance of being honest with yourself and being direct with yourself, while still having some sort of self-compassion, knowing that you are, doing what you need to do. And then that kind of leads into being a bit more mature, a bit of maturity of understanding. Maybe that comes with the experience of doing that, because it does take work to get there. You know what I mean? And I mean, I suppose there's a lot of different layers here. It's kind of a big thing I'm not sure where to start, on this commitment over compliance part, but I think the biggest part for me, I always to try to help coaches understand and people I work with understand is it's really about you. I can't tell you, this is how it is or not how it is. You have to know. You have to find a way to stop lying to yourself and stop sort of like pretending, hide behind some facade of like, oh, you have a system that you follow, or here's my 10 steps to this, or here's, we all get busy doing that. We all like, we like trying to sell ourselves constantly, so I think you have to always kind of have one foot in, one foot out, and then that kind of also leads to the people around you. Are they feeding you? Are they a little yes men kind of thing? Are they feeding you, BS? Are they being honest with you? Are they, are they doing the best that they can? There's a lot of layers here. So I'm not sure what part that you wanted me to break down, but,
The biggest part that I think a lot of people really struggle with, and I'm, thinking a lot about, the old saying is like, they're just not quite reaching their potential. Right. And I guess my real question is, and we forget the teams for a second. And if we looked at,
Sure.
All of us in the mirror and says like, yeah, I know I'm not giving it 100%. I know I'm not doing my best. Why, from your experience, why do you think that is? And what would be some like tactical, tangible steps of going, hey, this is what I have to do to be better, right? And I think there's a lot of that just out there, and I don't think this is new. I think everyone wants the easy road to success, right? It's like we all want it right now. We don't want to do the hard work to be fit, to be, have healthy financials or healthy relationships or to be successful. It's what's the quickest way I can get there? And true success doesn't happen like that. That's the truth. No one really likes to talk about. But I think it's the truth that we all really need to hear is no, it actually requires work.
Look, I would say, when you first started speaking, somebody go back earlier, I think one of the biggest problems we have is there's too many distractions as well. So it's very easy to kind of think you're, being busy, doing all this and that, being very distracted. So you have to learn how to focus. So I would go to take a little step back. How do you do what you need to do and be committed to it? Is that you have to learn out. And I don't remember where I learned this, but I know it's from someone else. I'm stealing this for sure. I just can't remember where. It was a long time ago, but I've been using it for decades now. Is that, the definition of focus, right? Focus is making the most important thing the most important thing. And what is the most important thing? Is whatever I'm doing right now. Like you and I are having this conversation, and I just look at it as like you and AJ, Jason and AJ, we're just chatting, catching up, getting to know each other a little bit better. I'm not worried or thinking about what I have to do after this, what just happened before I got on the call, what my kids are doing, what Arena's doing, none of it matters. Like right now I'm here, like nothing else matters, period. And I've trained and conditioned myself to make sure that like, this is where I am. And if I ever catch myself slipping, I pull myself right back in straight away. Right. So I think that's a big part of being able to like develop that skill. Now, what keeps people from doing this? I think, like you said, looking in the mirror and saying these things, and you know that you're not really, what's stopping people? I mean, again, I think you're right. It's nothing new, right? Sometimes it's, it evolves in different ways, but there's not really many new things if we're really being honest, it's just evolution and different wording, the descriptions of it and different approaches maybe, but it's all kind of very similar. But I think it goes to the first part I thought of was this, is that it's a fear of failure, a fear of, well, what if I do this and it doesn't work? How am I going to be perceived? People worry about, the perception of them and, perspective and perception people have, from others. Because no one wants to, whether we like to admit it or not, no one wants to look bad. Like go out there and put yourself out there and it fail. Obviously we don't want that. You know what I mean? We don't want to see like we're trying our best and it doesn't work because it hurts our identity. So people lock in too much of, their identity with what they're doing, whether it's success or failure. Nowadays it's even harder because everything on social media and online is about everyone's so successful, it's so easy. And I did these 3 steps and now I have everything, all this, this facade of how things work. So I really think there's this fear. And the issue is, and this is something with Arena, the tennis girl I've been working for years now and a lot of them actually is the thing that gets them past and that next level is them realizing that it is fear that's stopping them, right? There's this threat, this fear, right? Versus, that kind of threat versus challenge kind of concept, right? So most people are in this threat state where their fear of whether it's fear of failure, whether of being seen a certain way, whether of, it is a bit scary to do something new. There's a lot of layers of fear. The main part is you have to learn how to deal with fear, right? You have to face fear. You can't wait for it to go away. You can't, get busy doing other things to think it's going to, kind of work your way around it. There is something that all of us know that's holding us back, right? Everyone knows. Maybe it's hard for them to see it right now, but deep down inside, if they really be honest with themselves, they know what's holding them back. What are they worried about? What are they scared about? And if they're having trouble doing that, find people around them to help them realize what those things are. And then they need to face those things. They need to turn around, open their eyes, and go through it. The only way to get through fear and to get to that next level is to go through it. There's no going around it. There's no waiting. There's no, buying a bunch of little mini courses or doing this little thing or doing a little that. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't work. It doesn't work. Just like you said, you talk about getting fit and healthy and diets. I mean, how many 7-step programs to making $1 million or your best-selling book or your diet or your workout? There's thousands of them. And if they all worked, then why are there thousands of them? Why do we keep buying more and more every year? Well, because they don't work. And I mean, they might work, but they don't work because people are missing first this element we're talking about. Like, are they really being honest with themselves? That commitment to doing and committing to doing these things. The other is those 3 elements that you mentioned about what I really focus on is managing your energy, your environment, and your emotions. Like for me, those are the things that's the glue that holds all that together. That's the fundamental stuff that people don't work on, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we're talking about right now, that commitment over compliance, that vulnerability, the maturity, that, understanding, how you work, that self-awareness. Those 3 elements, without those, you can buy and do every course you want. You could do all the steps and you might get some success, but you're never going to sustain it. You're going to be a one-hit wonder, right? And that one hit isn't going to hit what it should have and it could have, because you're just copy and pasting. You're just typing into something, see what Chat GPT told you, and you're just going to follow those steps and hey, ta-da, it's all magic. And again, some people might get a little bit further on, but they're just going to go right back to where they were. They're not going to keep growing. They're not going to keep going through this because it's not real. It's not coming from inside from them. It's that analogy of like, before you ever drive a stick, a manual, right? You have the knowledge of what you're supposed to do, right? You're pushing the clutch, the gears, all that stuff. It doesn't matter how much you memorize it, you know it, you can recite it, you can explain it 100 different ways to like 10 different languages. As soon as you get behind the car the first time, you're jerking and stalling, you're killing the engine, because that's a different level of understanding. That's experience and understanding. And so that's what that gets missing. And though I honestly believe over my own personal experience, my professional experience, and all the different people I've helped become, world champions in sport, who, started businesses and became successful, all of them, the main focus wasn't, here's the detailed system that you need to follow. Like, we find something that fits you, right? Find a system that fits you and your environment and where you are right now, right? And your resources and things that connect with you. That's great. Find that. But that system is only going to go so far if you don't know how to manage your emotions, because that's part of that commitment over compliance part, isn't it? Right? That resistance, that fear, that whatever, the hesitation that you have, or maybe that like, oblivious thing that you think everything's perfect and you're amazing and you're not really, right? You have things to work on. Maybe it's the other side of that coin. Managing your emotions, I said, is a big part. Managing your energy. So your internal energy, your mental energy, your physical energy, managing that, because that's a key part. Because it doesn't matter how switched on you are, how good you are. If you're mentally, emotionally, physically fatigued, you'll manage that energy. Whatever you do is going to be, half-assed. It's not going to be very effective.
Yes, I have a question about that. So, because I think this is a really big topic in a lot of different circles right now. What would you say are the best things that you've seen work to help people manage their energy?
Sure. I think the first thing, the first thing is obviously always acknowledging it. Like, it's actually a key thing, more than your systems and your time. I would say I always start with the physical things, right? Because the thing about doing something that's more tangible and physical, that is in your control no matter what your mood is, right? No matter how you're feeling right now. So I'll give you an example. Like, let's say it's a very simple example, how I breathe. Like, I can get you to breathe a certain way right now, and you're going to get, if I say, let's say we do some, I don't know, some meditative yoga type breathing, where we're like breathing like really in slowly, hold your breath and have really long, slow exhales, get more parasympathetic. I don't know, I can explain how that works later if you want, but, having like longer exhales, it becomes more parasympathetic. You're more in that rest, relax, digest. You're more sort of aware of where you are. You're more aware of your body or your surroundings. So we can spend 5 minutes just breathing nice and slow. Now, how are you going to feel if we do this breathing for real? If you just switch off everything, no noise, no distraction, and you just breathe real slowly, how are you going to feel? Are you going to feel fired up, like you're ready to go, like, fight down, take on the world? You jumping up and down screaming? Of course not, right? You're going to be like just calm and relaxed. And that was just from changing how you breathe. If I get you breathe it really, really fast right now, just on your own, just breathe it really fast and all crazy, are you going to feel all relaxed and calm? Of course you will, right? If I have you take a deep exhale everything and hold your breath as long as you can and keep holding as long as you can, you're going to be calm and relaxed. You're going to be stressing out. So just by some physical thing simple as breathing is going to change how you're feeling. This makes sense? So, and that's how you're feeling. That's a big part of how you manage your energy, right? So understanding, and my biggest point of that is if I do something physical, how I move my body, how I stand, if I do some mobility, some slow moving, Tai Chi or yoga or whatever you want to call it, right? Versus if I stood up right now, running places fast as I can for 10 seconds, I'm going to be a different person for that moment right afterward, right? My state, my energy, my focus, my intention is all going to be in a different place based on what I did with my body. And the reason I like to talk more about that is again, like, how I feel doesn't matter, right? I need to get something done. I have to face something. I'm in the middle of something. Something's approached me, good or bad, opportunity, obstacle, whatever. The thing is, if I need to be in a certain state, I need to manage my energy as best I can. I always start with the physical because that's in my control no matter how I feel, right? No matter my mood, no matter what's going on. Now, yes, it's difficult sometimes to do those things if you're in a certain mood or a certain state of mind, right, or an environment. But it takes a little bit of discipline to build the habit.
Right. That's good. Yeah.
So it just takes a little bit of discipline to do what you need to do regardless of how you're feeling. I would say the managing energy part is just being aware. There's a lot of things. I mean, I know I harped on that for a while, but the breathing's a big part. So at the end of the day, I do a thing called legs up breathing. So with all my athletes, all my people, at the end of the day, or at the end of a match, or after end of like maybe you have an intense session of like some new thing with your business, and you guys have just been going for hours, and you're just about to your head's about to explode, and you're exhausted. Just go lay down, throw your legs up on the couch, or up on a wall, and just breathe, and just try to let your head relax, your neck relax, get it sink into the floor, and focus on having really slow, long exhales. Just sit there, and anything goes in your head, just let it come and go. Don't try to think about anything. Don't not think about anything. Just let it happen, whatever happens. And sit there for 4 or 5 minutes, 2 minutes if that's all you have, right? And that just resets a lot of things in your body. It gives you a moment because it works and kind of recharge. One, with your legs up, it takes a lot of stress off your heart, off your system. You get all that blood flow back. Two, that breathing, that slower exhale, for example, that's one example. You become more parasympathetic. So, that sort of more relaxed and calm sort of state versus very fight, fear, which is probably what you've just been doing for the last 2 hours. So you're kind of resetting your nervous system, kind of going, okay, let's just reset for a moment. And if you do those little mini breaks throughout the day, those things add up. So if you have those, whether you can throw your legs up or not, but even just take that time out to breathe, to slow yourself down, to get off your phone, to switch off your head, even if it's 2 minutes. I'll tell you a quick story. If I'm going too fast, let me know, because I get very excited about this stuff.
No, this is great. I think what the biggest kind of takeaway that I'm pulling from this, and then I want you to share the quick story, that it's like so much of this requires you to pay attention to yourself.
100%. Thank you. Oh my God, that is so amazing. Exactly. All of everything that we have to do and everything I talk about, it starts with you or looking at yourself in the mirror, like that self-awareness. And there's ways of developing. Your body tells you a lot of things before you realize it. There's even studies now that have shown that our brain is reacting to something before it actually happens. Before it actually happens. Almost like we're in this like weird live TV delay thing where our brain is just a moment before something happens, it's a responding to it. So, you know what? Or where you can become of what your body's telling you, and of your environment, which we haven't even broken down that at all, but like the environment's a huge part, of being able to know how to manage your energy. Managing energy, I think, is start with the physical, tangible things. You understand that how you move your body and how you breathe is going to either use energy or restore energy, right? It's going to recharge you or it's going to drain you. It's going to put you in a state of alertness and hyper readiness, or it's going to be calm and more relaxed. Like all these different, go on and on and on. And so, again, you have control of that. And so the quick story I have is I remember I had this phase for a couple of years. I was teaching a couple of different schools and universities. I was coaching on the side. I was doing mentoring. I was teaching jiu-jitsu. I was doing all these different things. And plus I had all my kids and they're all very busy. I'm always very, very engaged with those guys. And, I have this little thing and I have this issue with sleeping. I sleep a couple hours a night, like sometimes even when I go to sleep, my body doesn't like switch off. I have some things I have to work on with that because it's great. But been that way for a very long time. And I would do something instead of having like this monophasic bit of sleep, so like one big block of sleep and and we all do like the nighttime, we have our 7 to 9 hours, is I wasn't getting any sleep. So throughout the day, I'd have these little mini breaks. Let's say I had like 4 different places to go to that, for work, for teaching, coaching, etc. And before I got there, I'd drive to the place, I'd sit in my car I'd turn everything off. So it's just quiet. And I'd sit there for how much ever time I have, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And I would just chill, just breathe. And I try not to think about anything. And if I do, I just let it kind of float in and out of my head. And then I'd had this visualization in my head, like, okay, whether I had an alarm on in case I fell asleep. As soon as I had to get out of the car and open the door, as soon as I closed the door, it was like a light switch in my mind. I go, boom, and I'm ready. As soon as I walk in the door, I'm just so on fire, so focused. I'm 100% just boom, 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 boom. And then I get to my car afterward. I sit there. I'm like, oh my God, I just done. I'm exhausted. And I'll spend 2 minutes there before I drive. And then I drive to the next place and I do the exact same thing. Before I get out of my car, I reset. I breathe, I chill, I have a nap if I had 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. And then as soon as I walk in the door, close my car door, it was like a light switch, go click, everything turns off and I go. Again, nothing else matters except for what I'm doing right now. If you, like you and AJ, you're spending your time to, let me come and talk and share and all this stuff. Like, how could I not be 100,000% here for you right now? Like, how disrespectful is that to myself and to you and to everyone else? Like, it has to be that way. And so for me to have the energy, I had to find a way to fit in those little gaps to like kind of reset, recharge. So that way I was 100% engaged with whatever I needed to do.
For you really quick, something just dawned on me because there is such a systemic problem, I think, in life
Sure.
because it doesn't matter if it's at home or at work, is multitasking,
Yes. Oh, yeah.
right? It's like we're so busy that you can't just do one thing. And I'm just curious, like, how much of that is what's draining our energies? Because it's like if you really had the ability to only be like, hey, what's the most important thing? It's the thing I'm doing right now, and it gets all my focus,
Sure.
then it seems like your entire body, your entire being can go in one direction. But if you're trying to do this, like I was just thinking of like some of my days where it's like I have the kids in the back, right? I'm doing business calls on the phone, I'm driving, like I'm doing 100 things at the same time, and then it's like I'm like, ha. So much of that is because it's like I'm not doing any one thing at the same time. And I'm just curious, like, how much of that is a real stressor for your energetic being?
I think all the above. I think, look, the reality is, especially when we have families and businesses and, obligations and all these different things, the first part is just to understand, like, there's obviously going to be times where that's how it is. A call you have to take and you just pick the kids up from school and there's this sport thing and there's this and that. And like, sometimes it's going to happen. So I think that's a big part of just being able to manage your energy is understanding, like, look, that's how it's going to be that way sometimes. And there's going to be these moments where it is going to be a bit more chaotic. There's going to be things that'll come up that weren't in your control. The timing was off. Having that be like a burden, and it's a weight, you can save some of that energy and that resource by not stressing that you're stressing, right?
Yeah.
About the fact that you're doing this thing, because that often I think is the worst part is the thought that we know that we're doing something or that we know that it's too much or that, we overthink this a little bit. So I think that's a big step of managing your energy in that sense is just accepting the fact, look, sometimes it's going to be this way. Now, the next thing though is going, okay, it doesn't mean you just allow it to happen and don't have control over that and don't, create the environment where you can have your moments at least, right? Where that is your time to be able to switch off. Again, it takes practice. You have to learn how to do that, right? And so, if you go and say multitasking, we have to do all the 100 different things, it's great. But I'm sure you've heard this before. It's like, well, are you looking to just get something done? Like half-ass it, get it out, tick a box, like everybody else, right? Or are you trying to be the best at what you do? Are you trying to get really good at what it is you're trying to learn or what you're trying to get to? Are you wanting to really be seen as like, and even the thing is, this goes back to lying to yourself. If I'm just half-assing a bunch of different things, right? And I kind of glued it together really quick, right? When it comes down to the big moments, right? Of knowing and believing in yourself, like you already know you're full of shit. Excuse my language. Like you already know, right? Because you've kind of half-assed in this, you kind of put that together, you didn't give it your best, right? So when it comes down to it, it's like an easier analogy is like with training. If Arena, who, I don't know if you guys know, Sabalenka, she's world #1 tennis player, been with her like 6-7 years. If she knows that if our practice, our training, if she was kind of not really committed to it, not really focused, not really there, when she shows up on the court and there's a very stressful moment, a lot of pressure, she'll fall apart. Some side of her, you can't lie to yourself. You can try to pretend to, but when it comes down to it, it's going to show up. And it's going to show up in the times that you don't want it most. So, that's one of many reasons why it's like, listen, you need to find a way. If there's something that you think is going to be pretty valuable for you or for someone else, and you're giving that time, then like find a way, even if it's just a few minutes, if it's just a moment, because that's where it'll start, those little things. Just take a minute where it's like, listen, I got to do this one thing. You have this thing that's like going to take you an hour. Okay, take 2 minutes of it or take a small bit of it. Take one part of that and go, look, I'm going to complete this. Before I do anything else, I'm going to find a way to switch off. And while you're doing it, if you find your mind going somewhere else, just give yourself a little slap on the mind and go, no, right back to this. Because it'll happen. You're gonna drift off. But it just practice, right? It just takes practice of doing that. Again, it just takes the discipline to create the habit.
But I love what you said. It's like, I think, like one of my big takeaways from this conversation already is just the discipline of making whatever I'm doing the most important thing. It deserves, if I'm going to do it, it deserves all my focus and attention. Doesn't matter if it's a phone call or a podcast interview or a memo. It does not matter, right? But it requires all my attention to do it well, to give it the best of what I have. And anything other than that it's below what my ability is.
Why am I doing it?
So,
look.
Why am I doing it?
Exactly. It reminds me, let's go back to when you asked me like how I got this, how I got here. How am I getting all these different opportunities and people who I've worked with want to keep working with me for years and years and years, or when something comes up, they think of me like, hey, why is it when I give some advice or give feedback about people want to hear what I have to say, which still kind of blows me away, right? It's like, why me, right? Well, it's because everyone knows, even my kids, they know, like if one of my kids were to walk in right now, I mean, they're at school, hopefully, right? If they were to walk in right now, right, and I was doing something, look, there's, oh, excuse me, Dad, whatever. If I was doing something and I needed to do it, I'd say, oh, give me 1 minute. I'll be right with you, right? I would just let them know. Otherwise, I'd stop what I'm doing and I would just, I'd close my laptop. I go, hey, what's up? And they know that when I'm with them and I'm asking them or I'm talking to them, that's all I'm doing.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
they feel it, they know it. And everyone I work with is the same thing. It's like, when we're here, that's it. There's nothing else. And they know that. Right. And I don't pretend I know everything. So if there's something comes up, I'm like, I think we can approach it this way, but like, I'll get feedback from them. I go, what do you think? Or, hey, you know what? So-and-so is really good at this. I think this, but let's go double check with this person. So I never try to be the one who has all the answers. It's like, well, let's figure this out together. Right. And I'm here with you no matter what. Right. And so I think that's one of the best lessons I've learned was just, I recognize it now, but it was just something I was always doing. Back then, maybe not on purpose. It was just sort of my personality. It's like, I think that's a big way how I survived so much is I had as a younger kid, before all the craziness, I had a strong set of values that was built into me, I think. And for me, that was like, I don't know what it was, but in my mind, I just knew that at whatever cost to me, I had to live by those values, right? I had a certain character, a certain way that I knew who I really was inside. And the only way of getting there was to do these things. Like I had to be that person in every situation, no matter the cost, no matter the whatever, right? And I still do the same thing. Even with business, I've turned down some crazy opportunities because I committed to something else. And even if that's something else, and the people I've worked with, like, dude, you need to go do that. That's crazy. I'm like, well, no, I'm here. This is I'm here to help you. We made this commitment. If I do the right thing all the time and I put myself into it every single time, you know what I mean? And give everything I can, then that's not going to be the only opportunity I have in my life. I know it. Right.
That's good. That's
And
good. I think that's a really important just aha and insight for all of you who are listening, of just doing a quick inventory of like how much distracted focus, right, do you have, and it's like versus how much intentional focus do you have. Like if we were to do, for each of us, if we walked away and said, hey, I'm just going to do a quick audit, just even if it's a mental audit of my day, like how many times do I catch myself multitasking or trying to do multiple things at once versus just like doing the thing that is right in front of me? I wonder how many times it would be, because I bet for most of us, including myself, it would be more than we'd probably be willing to openly admit. And I think that's really important, right? So okay, I know that we're kind of wrapping up towards the end of our conversation. I want to talk about environment.
Okay. Oh, great. That'd be great.
Look,
yeah. I'll try to keep it. That's another big one. But listen, I think, the biggest part about environment, I know people talk about like, manage your environment and, all these things. Again, nothing new, but I always like to look at things from various lenses, right? Through different angles. And one of the things that, if you're just to do some searching or talking, reading some books about managing your environment, so much of it is about like your workspace, right? It's like all these physical things around you. For me, the biggest part about environment is the people. That's the most important part, is understanding and being aware of how different people influence you. Again, so you have to become more self-aware, right? You need to pay attention to how things impact you and influence you. You have to also understand how other people influence them, right? If the people that they're around. So, let's say I had to do some work with your partner, for example, right? Him and I were doing some work together, right? And I knew that before him and I do some work together, that the two of you had a meeting, like you had to go through some stuff. I want to understand like your relationship better, because then I know the kind of Roy I'm going to get in my meeting because he just left yours. Like you understand, like, so I have to understand like how all these things work together and how they all influence each other. Because at the end of the day, yeah, I know there's these cliche little things like, oh, you're the average of the 5 people or the comes and all, that's true. And that's why that's still around. But I think it's been around so long and it's so repeated so much that people just kind of assume that it just happens like, oh yeah, of course. But no one really takes the focus to make sure that, who they put around them, who they have on their team, who their team is around, and what they're doing, how they really do influence the environment, how they influence the mood, the energy, the flow, the focus, all these different things. So, managing your environment to me is a lot more about the people around you house. Everything that I got in my life, everywhere I got, was because I made sure I was in the right environment. I was around the right people I needed to be around, whether it was a work environment, whether it was individuals. I spent years, my entire life, and I'm still doing that to this day, is that trying to make sure that the people I surround myself with, I interact with, I get to know, that are people I can help, I can bring some sort of value to, I can be an asset to on some level, that also can do that for me, or someone that I know in my circle. So may not even be directly around me, but if I meet AJ, we're gonna start building a relationship. I feel, I'm gonna start doing some work with your company as well, I believe, and all these different things. And you and I might get to know each other better and better and better. And maybe there's some things you can help me with, but you know what? I might know someone else that's in my circle that you can really help. Now I can make sure that person is being looked after more so. And the better they are, the better they can do for me, and the better I can do for you, and vice versa. So, if we all are focused on making sure that everyone around us is doing the best that they can, and they have the best opportunities, and they're the best environment for them, then it's going to help me also. If this makes
That's
sense.
awesome.
See what I mean? So, like I said, like, I'll give you a very quick example with Arena. When I first met her, with a lot of athletes, especially individual sports, they have very, like, it's about them, because it is, they go on the court, the match, whatever, the cage, and it's just them alone. We have a team always, of course, but at the end of the day, they show up on the court, in front of the world by themselves. And, and everyone around the team is always making sure that that one athlete everything's good, everything's all together for them, right? But I said to her, like, the most amazing teams that I've ever worked with, whether it was business or otherwise sport, is that the person in charge, the focused person, the athlete in this case, right? They also understood how important it is for them to make sure that their team is okay. That, do they need some time off? Do they need this? Making sure that everyone around you is also okay, right? And being supported. That way they can do the best job for you as well, right? And then you build that trust. And again, then you build a team of people who are going to do things because they want to, not because they have to.
Yeah.
Right? It goes back to that commitment thing, right? And so it all very, ties together. But I mean, I could go on a lot of other stuff about environment, but for me, I think a lot of it is, it's been played out lots, talked about, distractions, and turn your phone off and the lights off and the technology, and, desk being clean, and, all the, okay, I get it, right? My house is clean sometimes and a disaster other times. There's between 2 to 5 kids here at all times, and animals everywhere, plants, and, so you know what? That's just the reality of it. I'm not going to pretend it's not. And anyone that does, you have kids, I'm sure that your house is not perfect all the time. I'm sure there's dishes in the sink right now that need to be done, right? Like, who cares? Stop pretending that everyone's perfect and everything's. Just manage your environment as best as you can, right? Look at the distractions that maybe you can kind of help others help you out. Maybe get the kids to do a little bit of something while you do this or whatever, right? Find a way to make the environment as smooth as you can for them, because then it'll make it for you. But I think most important for you is just have the right people around you. Because in those moments when you're doubting yourself, you're not doing your best, and why you're not, you're hesitating or whatever those things we spoke about earlier. If you have the right people around you, that's going to be a lot easier for you to. It's going to be a lot easier for you to face those fears. If you have an environment that's safe for you to try and fail, right, around you that's supporting that, and they're doing the same thing, and then you respond the same way to them, the way when they fail for trying something, then it's going to be, that's how it creates that world of getting better no matter what you're trying to do, whether it's dealing with some personal stuff or, becoming better at what you do professionally. It's all going to be about having the right people around you and making sure you understand, like, I'll sidetrack a little bit. I've beat that one to death now, but like, the other side of that is like, you're going to have people you're going to have to work with and interact with, or may even be your mentor or peer or boss that you're not going to get along with well, that you're not well with. And you got to figure out how to manage that as well. That sometimes you're going to have to just deal with it, up to a certain point, I suppose. But anyhow, I think, your team is all that matters. I think that's the most important thing, the people around you, giving them everything that you can, and they're going to do that for you. And then eventually the ones that won't be those kind of people, you'll see that, and then you'll just slowly push them away, and then you'll find the right people. So it's a very long process, and it never ends.
Yeah. What I love what you said, though, most about that is it's making sure that there's reciprocity in the relationship. It's finding people that you can help and that can also help you. It's not just, hey, go out and build a bunch of people around you that lift you up. It's like, no, you have to be able to lift them up too.
100%.
And I think that reciprocity part is really important. It's like, build your group of people around people that you can serve and that can also serve you, so that there's that mutual benefit. And I think that's a really important part that you don't hear a lot of people talking about. It's like, hey, go find the people that, challenge you and grow you and stretch you. But it's like, well, you need to do that for them too.
Exactly.
It's
Would you
gotta
like to do-
go, gotta go both ways. I
Exactly.
think that's a really important part of that.
Yeah. If you want to be actually successful or have a life that you would like to live and represent a life that you would like your kids to live, how about that? Be an example. I would say that some of the biggest ways that I've taught people a lot of these things isn't through me talking to them. It's from being that. You have kids, I have kids. They learn from what we do, not what we're telling them. Simple as that.
We literally just had this conversation over the weekend. We have two small boys. We have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Okay.
And over the weekend we were traveling, and my 7-year-old is my mini me. He's just my mini, my tonality, the exact words, the way I say stuff.
Oh, man,
And we just kept saying all weekend, it's caught, not taught.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Right? Caught, not taught. It's like, I didn't teach him those things. He taught those things, right? Because he's watching his mom. He's listening to his mom, and I heard him disciplining his little brother. And we have a strike system. He's like, I'm going to give you a strike, Liam. And we didn't teach him how to do those things. He taught how to do those things.
Yeah.
So it's taught, not taught. All right. We've got one last question, but before we do that, everybody, there's a really cool newsletter that Jason has put together. And so if you go to the coachingsweetspot.com/newsletter, again, that's the coachingsweetspot.com/newsletter, you can sign up for this brand new newsletter that Jason is putting together. So Jason, tell them what they're going to get in the newsletter.
Well, yeah, this is going to be a place where I get to share what I'm working on right now, what's going on with the team, what's going on with me, what sort of behind the scenes of all these high performance environments that I get the opportunity to work with, and helping people see and understand that, everyone is still human, and how do we work through all these obstacles, and also how do we prepare for opportunities. So I think a big part of it's going to just be a little bit of everything, a lot of insights behind my approach to things. Going to be a lot of questions, because I like to ask lots of questions to kind of get feedback from others and advice from others, kind of see their perspective and try to gather as many new lenses as I can to look at things from different angles. So a lot of it's going to be me just being able to, every month just share what's been going on, what lessons that we learned, I think a big part too is everyone's always talking about, and reading about how to overcome obstacles and grit and resiliency, but I don't hear a lot about how are you preparing for opportunities when they present themselves. Are you really ready when a big one comes up? Because you need to be ready for opportunities, that it's going to happen. So I think, looking at things from different perspectives, I think is a big part. We talk a lot about, I'll be sharing a lot of stuff about how to balance those 4 big elements of arousal, attention, focus, and intensity to get, based on what you're doing right now, and how to get the most out of that moment. So it's going to be fun, and it's going to be a good thing for me. It's going to be a good challenge to practice my writing, my sharing. There'll be some videos in there. So just a lot of insights of my crazy world.
So again, you can guys go to the coachingsweetspot.com/newsletter. You can sign up for that. It's a free newsletter, and check it out. All right, here's my last question for you. We kind of mentioned this in the very beginning in the intro of there's a lot of talk about getting success. But what do you do when you get it and you want to keep it and you want to maintain it? And so I would just love to hear a couple of quick thoughts on what are the best things that you've seen. And these could be practices, these could be different mindset approaches. But for so many of us, it's like you work so hard to get to this thing, and then it can go one of two ways, right? And I think it's really important for everyone to go, it's like, hey, it's like, once you get it, if you'd like to keep it and sustain it, here are some things that you can do to do that as well.
Yeah, look, I think just a basic overview, a couple of things is always remember how you got there. That's a big part of it. That discipline, the work, the effort, the who helped you get there. It's a huge part. Keep those people close. Even if what you're doing right now, and the next level you have is kind of outgrown what they can do for you, they were there for you when you needed them. So keep them close, right? And how they can, how you can continue to help them, but how they can help you might be a little bit different. Maybe it is just as a reminder of hey, how did you get here? So that effort, that work, that all those things, remember the errors that you made, the mistakes, the lessons, the people, all the above. So I would say that's the first thing, is just remember how you got there. Especially if it's a big success, because it's very easy to get very distracted and start getting lazy and think, oh, it's autopilot. Oh, I did it. It's like, well, no, To stay there, you have to keep doing it, right? The other thing is, constantly be doing that look in the mirror thing, asking yourself, are you really doing what you need to be doing? Is your time going in the right places? Are you focused for the, like our definition of focus? And just making sure that look, especially these days, you have to evolve. You have to always be evolving. You have to kind of find out what's going on. Like, we might have the best idea ever, right? But if the people that you're trying to help or work with, if where they're at is different than where you are, it's not going to work. You have to meet where they're at, right? So you have to know where they're at. You have to be interacting with them on a regular basis. You have to get to know them. You have to be in the trenches still on some level, right? On some level. And the last thing is, again, always, 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 what I already said is the people around you. Making sure you're managing that environment, that it's evolving, that everyone there is still know how you got there. You have that solid, strong foundation. And then you as a group, whatever that means for you, right? Is you have to decide, well, what's that next step for you now? So we have here, this is our next level. Let's try a few things to see what our next level can be, right? And if we have some small successes, great. But if you do, it doesn't mean that's where you are now, right? If you have 1 or 2 little wins after you get to that next level, that's not your new next level. You have to keep working. If you can do that next little level thing, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, great. Now you can kind of start thinking that's your next level. Now you can reassess and go, okay, what do we need to do now? What's the next thing? Think of it like a PR in a sport thing. If someone, has a PR one day, that doesn't mean anything. You did it once. Nobody cared. Spark line for you that day, big deal. Can you repeat that? So making sure that you have all your environment, that you've managing your emotions, keep working on those things that got you there. There's not really a big secret thing. I think the biggest part is that people, they forget how they got there. They forget the people that got them there often, right? So we need to just remember that. They don't go out looking for new people who can help them with that next level to keep evolving. And those 3 elements, I know I keep harping on them, but you need to keep working on developing, being aware of your environment, which is aware of yourself, aware of those around you, right? And how they interact and how they speak, how they, even just their vibe that they put off. I know you have to go, but listen, you'd be surprised that people will sweat out hormones, right? You ever meet someone, you just kind of feel they're anxious, even though their body language could be saying that they're fine and calm, but you just get a sense that there's kind of this like tension in them or this fear or this something. You sense things, right? Like it's crazy. Anyway, so managing those things, your emotions, keep developing how to manage your emotions as best as you can, understanding yourself, knowing your environment, and again, managing energy is going to be a big part of this.
Love that. Those are so good. And I think out of all of those, the one that I love the most is don't forget the people who were with you before it happened.
100%.
And I think that's important, not just for that mutual respect and gratitude and remembrance, but man, it's like they help keep you humble because they knew you win.
Right.
So important. And since you mentioned you were born in Japan, it's that what you were saying reminds me of that Japanese word ikigai.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Never constant, never ending improvement. You've
Always.
never arrived. There
Sure.
is always more to do, to learn, to be. I love that. Jason, what a great conversation. Thank you so much. This was really awesome, so insightful in so many ways. Y'all, if y'all want to check out my take on this, then check out the recap episode, which will be coming up next. And we will see you next time on The Influential Personal Brand. See you later, guys.
Thank you. See you guys. Thank you.